With us now is Senator Shaheen, a Democrat from New Hampshire. Senator, nice to see you. I'm sure you're glad you don't have to deal with discharge petitions being in the Senate and whatnot. But what you do have to deal with and have been dealing with is trying to figure out what to do with the enhanced Obamacare subsidies that expire in weeks now. There has been no movement to do anything. There were 2 votes in the Senate that didn't go anywhere. So when you look over at the House and see at least one Republican coming on board with a Democratic plan, what are your hopes this morning?
Well, I think that's very good news to see the House take action. One concern in the Senate has been we could pass something out of the Senate, but if Speaker Johnson continues to take the position that he's not going to take anything up, then it's dead on arrival when it gets to the House. So the fact that the House has a bipartisan discharge petition that they're going to hopefully get signed by enough members to be able to get legislation to the floor, that's very good news. And what we're doing in the Senate right now is there are bipartisan talks that are continuing. They have been constructive to date. I hope that everybody understands that the situation is urgent, that people are facing this deadline. So it's not likely we're going to get something done before the holidays, but there is a commitment to come back and to get something done when we get back.
Not before the holidays means that these things technically expire at the end of the year. I know there is a couple weeks sort of mushy period at the beginning of January. Maybe you can still get some action before people feel it. But this basically means it won't get done before they go away. You say constructive. Can you give us any sense of what the contours is? I mean, what kind of extension of the enhanced subsidies are we talking?
Well, I think there's a recognition that to do anything in the first year beyond clean extension is very difficult. But to think about that in the first year and in the second year to do a number of things that will help address the cost of health care, because in addition to helping people with the cost of premiums, we really need to look at the ongoing increasing costs of health care and what we can do to help address that. There are a number of bipartisan proposals that have been through both houses, actually, and they have not been taken up and signed into law. I think a number of those would help address the costs of prescription drugs, for example. Doing something about pharmacy benefit managers would do that. I think looking at how we can provide savings to people without having the insurance companies take a cut out of that is important. So there's lots of work that needs to be done, and I'm hopeful that there seems to be much more of a bipartisan commitment to address that.
Well, the clock is ticking on that. Senator, you're the ranking member in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Overnight, the president put out a statement that said he is ordering a blockade on all sanctioned oil tankers going in and out of Venezuela. What's your reaction to that? What do you think it means, first of all?
Well, it's hard to know what the White House means. They've been very inconsistent about the policy with respect to Venezuela. We heard Susie Wiles say, yes, replacing Maduro is the goal of the policy. We've heard the Secretary of State said, no, that's not the goal of the policy. The president says, well, we're interdicting drugs. We're trying to keep drugs from coming into the United States, something I think we all support. But the way it's being done raises questions of further escalation. We know that Russians are providing additional help to the Venezuelans. So there's a real risk, I think, of this conflict escalating in ways that could get the United States into a war, which no one is interested in doing.
I mean, if you had testimony, if Secretary of State Marco Rubio came to testify, if Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth did before your committee, what would you ask them about what the United States is doing in Venezuela?
Well, we did ask them. Now, that was a classified briefing, so we can't get into the details, but those questions were asked. I think very few people left feeling like we had gotten satisfactory answers.
You mentioned the interview that White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles gave to Vanity Fair. What do you think of it? You a Vanity Fair reader?
Well, I'm certainly a reader of that interview. It was surprising. I thought she was very frank in answering questions. I was particularly interested in her comments about Elon Musk and the DOGE committee's dismantling of USAID and foreign assistance, because she was absolutely right that what has happened as the result of that is that tens of thousands of people around the world are dying because we are no longer providing the assistance that those countries were counting on to help them stand up their health systems. And that is unconscionable.
There were new details about that, new details about a lot of things in that interview. Senator Jeanne Shaheen from New Hampshire, thank you for being with us. Hope you have a happy holiday.